Stay a while and listen.
Hello everybody, this is Juntas. Today I'm going to be going over how I would make Diablo 2 HD if it were to actually come out. A lot of this video will cover balance. I will not talk that much about content. You know, a lot of people would be very hyped for like a new act or a new class, etc. The video will not really cover that because I am of the mindset where Diablo 2 does not really need new content and an HD release. That would be something for a patch later on if Blizzard were ever to actually bother with that. Because right now I think we are just gonna have to be happy with anything related to an HD rumor or release, anything. So to make it easy on Blizzard, also for the community not to get hyped too much, I'm not gonna be talking about additional content like an extra act or class. So balance. A lot of the balance changes are going to be based around specific items and talking a bit about mercy chance definitely, and also going over all the classes, or at least the ones that I find need some changes. So with that, let's get to it. So then, first of all, I want to mention the HD Remaster talk video that I did a while ago. Not too many people watched it, but I got a lot of good comments. The pinned one was pretty sweet as well. Basically, a lot of people were only about stash space, so they want more stash. That's a good thing, I agree with that. A bigger inventory so you don't have to run to town that often is very good. And then also maybe even a shared stash so you don't have to mule. In my case, I think at one point I had 5 accounts, 3 of them just being for muling. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid. And yeah, you can spend an hour, 2 or maybe 3 hours muling in Diablo 2. It's that stupid. So shared stash and bigger stash would definitely be on my top one, I think also. Then also, this dude here goes down here, says that instant loot, anything like that ruins the game. Yeah, I suppose instant loot where you're not gonna be ninjaing, trying to click on the loot as fast as possible. I suppose that's the charm of Diablo 2, where I kind of wouldn't mind that everyone just gets their own loot. I don't really care about that. Stuff like running over gold would also be fine with me. I can't see how that could break the game in any ways, but maybe I would be wrong on that. A lot of people are also mentioning Anelios, those really hard items like Anelios where they're involved duping and stuff like that. So having kinda a way to stop, in this case, Stoner Jordan spam and everything, that would be a nice thing. Yeah, basically a lot of people just want the minimum stuff, but having that stash is definitely up there. But as you can see, I got a lot of good comments, so if you haven't seen that video before, I suggest watching it. It was just like 5 minutes long, but a lot of people pretty much just wanted the stash, which is something I can agree on, because it's definitely a little too clunky to play with nowadays in 2018. Right then, on to the first part of balance changes I would do, mercy chance. As you can see from the channel, I quite like mercy chance. I've done quite a few videos where I test out the damage, different setups, etc. Mercy chance has always been a big part of Diablo 2, where unlike other similar RPGs, they either don't have them or it just doesn't matter at all. For some reason, mercy chance are extremely overpowered in Diablo 2, and they break or make a build. It's that conclusive, we can say. Anywho, the first mercy chant we obviously have to talk about, also why I'm on this lightning sorceress here, is of course Infinity. Infinity is hands down the most overpowered item in Diablo 2 next to Enigma. Why is that? Well, it's due to basically it being the only reason why the lightning sorceress and Javason's lightning amazons being any good at all, even just trap assassins getting a good boost, elemental casters getting a good boost in general. Like there's so many builds that benefits from it, but it's mainly lightning builds, and especially lightning sorceress and Javasons. Infinity, the aura itself, the damage is already very strong. It has a lot of good stats. Faster run walk is very nice, crushing blow, etc. The stats are good enough. It's nothing amazing, but it's pretty decent. But the aura is just too good. Infinity, I can just pop it up on the screen now what it does. It's basically overpowered, and there's really no more to say than that. If I did like a standard Chaos run on this this particular build, or like even just a 117 faster cast rate, lightning sorceress, whatever, with Infinity, that would probably be about 3 to 3.5 minutes normally. Without Infinity, that could maybe be as much as 4 to 5 minutes, almost twice as long. Without Infinity, lightning builds would probably also suck too much, or here comes the point where I'm trying to make it would just be more balanced, it would be more fair. Lightning builds are just too strong in general in Diablo 2, and it's not because, the lightning skills themselves are overpowered. They're probably just fine. It's just an Infinity boosts them so much that it's ridiculous, especially with having no immunities. That is where it really comes to shine, because I do believe that only Infinity and lower resist are like the only two sort of mainstream abilities, ways that you break complete immunities in the game. So yeah, Infinity needs to be changed. It's about time. I would love to see that happen. Then I also want to mention Reverse Toll fast. Reverse Toll is obviously something that makes it very easy for melee characters that often struggle, but still I find it to be a little too good with the proc. I suppose if we were to nerf the proc, it would maybe be, it would maybe hurt stuff like bow Amazons that would have to use an Atma Scarab Amulet then. I'm not quite sure how I would nerf Reaper's Toll. I just think that again it's a little too strong, also just because it benefits a lot of classes that are already strong, like a Wine Druid. With the hurricanes or tornadoes, that's a very good buff for them. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but Reaver's Toll would be the second choice. I think all the other kind of setups you can do on an Act 2 mercenary are kind of fine enough. It's basically just those two items. And then of course I also have to mention the other mercenaries. It can't just be Act 2 only. The reason why we all use the Act 2 mercenaries is just because of those two items that I mentioned before. And of course the auras. The auras on the Act 2 mercenaries are also very strong, but it's mainly just those two items and a few other setups. Anywho, as you can see, I also did try to make a few videos on the Act 5 mercenaries, and even with a very good setup with a Last Vizier Fortitude and a Socket Gulliam's Face, which turned out to be the best setup that I found. I tested a lot of videos. Feel free to check out the videos for that. Even with this setup, it still wasn't very good. The mercenaries would sort of die easily enough. It wouldn't do a lot of damage. Overall, it just wasn't really a pleasant experience, especially also just for the cost. Because getting a Last Wish in this particular base here, Colossus Blade, that hits really fast. That is the base that I wanted, if the best base, if I remember correctly. Anywho, even with all this, it wasn't really pleasant. In order to actually make the Act 5 mercenary any good, would be to allow to wearing its shield. Imagine if I could use like a Phoenix shield on it, if I could use all these different shields like rune words, etc. Even just like a warring defensive setup with a shield and a defensive weapon or whatever, make it really tanky. But all, just allow it to wear Runeward Shield. That would be an amazing boost. It would be such a good support. Not sure it would be as good as the current Infinity or Reverse Toll setup from the Act 2 Mercenary, but it would still be very good on a lot of builds, and it would open up a lot of new ideas for builds and etc. So just allowing the Act 5 Mercenary to wear shields would be amazing. And I mean, come on, even the Barbarian from the normal class can wear shields, so why not allow us to wear shield on that one? Ah yes, the mercenary from Act 1, the one you get after Quest 2 and then forget about it until it dies, and then you're like, should I buy it again? Not really, and you'll just move on. Like, that's basically the life of the Act 1 mercenary. unless you're playing one specific build, that is the Bow Amazon using a Wind Force, so you can wear Faith on it. And that setup is not even the best one. You know, it's kind of pointless to have a mercenary that doesn't fill any role for support, and then it doesn't even do good damage. So basically make it super strong. You know, you can triple or quadruple the damage. I don't know, something like really you know, simple as just buffing the damage would make it so much better. Another thing would also just to make it maybe do like a multiple shot arrow with cold, or you know, just make it do some AoE. I think the main problem is just that it attacks very slow and it doesn't do AoE. And the same thing could be said for the Act 3 mercenary. It also has some quirks, it can do a few setups, etc., but it's also just kinda not worth using. Even the Act 1 mercenary is better than the Act 3, I would say. And it's kinda sad, cause come on, the Act 3 is pretty cool. It's a, you know, it's a caster, a mage, a battle mage in that way. It's very nice, you know, from the lore aspect, you know, gameplay, game point of view and whatnot. So those two definitely just need more damage somehow. That would be very nice. Very well then, let's move on to classes, starting with the Amazon. Obviously, the Amazon, which I've shown a lot on the channel, is probably one of the strongest melee characters in the game, even if it's like not a pure melee character in that sense. Lightning builds are just very strong with Infinity and everything. However, I would love to see something like Fend and Impale actually be useful. I tried to do a jab build or something like that a while ago on the channel. I don't think a lot of people really watched that guide, and that kind of also just shows a little bit, you know, how popular other, you know, Javason builds are compared to just going with, you know, Lightning Fury and Charge Strike. I would even say something like, you know, Plague Javelin is more popular than going Fend or Impale and Jab. So that's kind of sad, because these abilities really suck, even if they can do like 100k poison damage or whatever. And the passive and magic skills, you know, if they could ever fix the evade, void and dodge bug animation stuff like that would be amazing, but I don't think it's gonna happen. That would be like a rewrote of the code or whatever. But God, it would be nice to not have this worry where you're thinking, oh, should I even bother get these abilities, because it just stuns me into an animation when the abilities procs. I think also Pierce would need to be nerfed a little bit. I find it to be too strong. Maybe that's just me, but putting a few points into Pierce and you got 100% Pierce. Obviously, it's very good for the specific class, but yeah, I find it a little strong. I also think they should buff the Valkyrie a little bit and somehow make decoy more interesting. I'm not really sure how you would do that. Maybe it could spawn like 2 decoys with more skills into it, just something simple like that. But definitely decoy, the Valkyrie even, should be buffed. And then finally, bow and crossbow skills. As I talked about before, the Bow Amazon is probably the worst character in Diablo 2, at least compared to the amount of gear, the amount of wealth, etc. you would have to spend on it to make it good. I did all builds now, both fire and cold, and in the end, none of them really performs good, even with good gear. I think the most budget friendly one would actually be cold, if I'm thinking completely honest about it. If you have no gear, I think a freezing one is actually okay with strafe. Even the perfect GMB faith setup, etc., multiple shot, whatever, crazy gear, we're talking maybe 1000 to 10,000, 20,000 FG on gear. It would still only be like decent for Chaos runs on players 1. That is how weak a Bow Amazon is in PvM. And why is that? Well, it's due to the base damage of bows generally. I don't know if I have a bow on here, but basically bows are just, they do a lot of damage with the stats and everything, but the base damage of weapons. So in this case, the Matriarch Javelin here does 340 max damage with throw, which is, about the same damage as bow does, which is kind of sad. So basically we need to buff all bows in the game, starting from like a quiver bow in Act 1 to, a crazy GMB faith, whatever. Then it would be fair. I think it basically just comes down to, again, higher numbers is better, and the Bow Amazon would be in a lot better place, and it would open up much more choices, also just in gear, because right now there's really only 2 or 3 bows that a Bow Amazon can use for in-game, because the rest of them are just too low damage. It's not that the other bows are not interesting, they don't have a lot of good stats on them, procs, mechanics, etc. They just don't do a lot of damage. The best example of that would be the Mavina set. The whole set is actually very good, great stats, survival, etc. It's just that the bow of the set has so low base damage that you're never gonna be doing any good damage, period. Right, let's move on to the barb then. Probably the most boring class in Diablo 2. You know, a lot of people, if they think about RPGs, especially Diablo 2, they think about the barb. But honestly, this is the most boring class ever. It really only has one good build, and that is Whirlwind. All the other builds are just suck ass compared to Whirlwind. And why is that? Well, let's take it. Frenzy, yeah, it does some AoE, it has a good run speed, etc. But in general, it lacks damage and AoE. It's just underperforming to Whirlwind. So that's that. Then Berserk is some sort of weird ability where it doesn't really do much compared to even just something like a concentrate build. Then we have something like double throw barbs, which are also shown on the channel. Very gimmicky and way too low damage. It's also rather hard to play, and the mechanics of running out of ammunition or whatever you want to call it is also very clunky. Double swing is also not really good. You know, a lot of the abilities early on from in like other classes, say Sorceress, etc., they can really start using their early on abilities even at end game, whereas a barb only really has 2 skills in his combat tree, and that is Frenzy and Whirlwind. The rest of them are just kind of gimmicky and doesn't really matter. It's pretty sad when it comes to that, because then the problem is with the barb that all the other trees here are just buffs. You know, they just increase a number, which then really leaves you very limited in how you can play the class. Because obviously all the other classes like the mastery, the run speed, the natural assistance, etc., all the bows and whatnot, I wouldn't want to change anything about this. This is very good, also just for party and co-op. Like, you can actually be the best support class in Diablo 2 if you make good bows, battle orders, even whatever you want to call them. So yeah, just give us more abilities to use on Whirlwind. That will be a good start. And so the Druid, probably the class with the worst tree of all classes. Obviously I'm talking about Summon Tree. If it wasn't because we had Oak Sage, none of the abilities would ever really gain much from being used. I would probably just go as far as saying you should at least triple the damage of all summons. Even if you max Grizzly and you get all the synergies for Grizzly, it still doesn't do a lot. Yes, it survives pretty well, actually it survives very good, but the damage is just so low that it ends up just being like a meat shield, and that's the case for all the other ones as well. But the problem is that they are not surviving well, so they end up just being like an annoying meat shield that you think, oh, should I bother use them, should I bother keep them up? It's kind of like Necromancer skeletal mages, where they also kind of gimmick and doesn't really do a lot of damage, but you still feel like you should keep them up. That is the case for all the summons in the summoning tree for the Druid. I could also just mention really fast that the vines and creepers and stuff like that, I suppose in like a fan mod, Path of Diablo or whatever they are called, all those, they have been buffed to do a lot more damage, etc. So that's nice to kind of see. But basically just buff the damage of the summons. Also, I would love to like have like an crazy amount of life on Oak Sage and Herd of Wolverines, so they don't die so easily in heated combat, because it's so annoying with especially Oak Sage being able to die so fast, even if you max it, because like 1,000 life or whatever, 600 in this case with no buffs, that's not a lot when you're facing heated combat. And then I should probably also just mention really fast that the problem with Furry Druids is that it's basically just Rabies sucks for PvM, it's good PvP. I would love to see if Rabies were really good for PvM. That would also mean that I'm able to do AoE, but as most people know, poison damage in Diablo 2 just sucks ass. It's only really the poison Necromancer that's any good for it. So having rabies for AoE would make a furry druid a lot better. And then of course we have to talk about werebear. This needs to be buffed a lot. You know, werebear has so good abilities like shockwave, hunger, like fire claw is also kind of fun. I did a few builds for those on the channel, but it's just very low damage. It doesn't really matter. You're always just gonna have to do a furry druid if you're gonna be doing any decent damage. And so then the elemental tree, it basically just comes down to doing a stupid hurricane tornado build. The fire tree is also quite good. You know, it's not the worst one, but the problem is with fire tree that doesn't have like a fire version of infinity or whatever, so you can't break immunities, and then you end up with having only like, you know, your mercy chant and like a werebear at level 30-ish maxed to deal with fire immunities. And that means that if say you're doing a chaos run solo on a fire druid, fully fire druid, and it's gonna take like 5 to 7 minutes depending on your gear level, and if you even bother clearing it before you rage quit, honestly. If the abilities just kind of gave us, I don't know, mixed elemental damage, like say if Fisher also did like yeah, I don't know, cold damage for some reason, that would make a lot of sense for a game mechanic point of view. But if they did just some more damage, that would be great. Obviously Volcano, the spell here, has damage which is just like, I don't know, hidden black damage, whatever you want to call it, melee damage. That helps a little on fire immunities, but it's still not enough to make us deal with fire immunities, which of course are plentiful in the end game in Hell in Diablo 2. So that's pretty much it. All the other classes that I didn't really mention, I found them to be fine. I could mention like really fast that the Paladin is quite limited. I would buff something like the Auras, make a true Aura support Paladin. That would be very cool. The Assassin is also really strong. A lot of the builds just revolves around Death Sentry, so you end up, no matter like kind of what build you do, if you're doing like a kicker or whatever, you're just gonna rely on traps anyway, which is kind of boring. But then again, if you didn't use traps, the class will also lag a lot behind. So yeah, I'm not really sure how you can do that, because a lot of builds can be made with the Assassin, which is also shown on the channel. It's just that without, you know, if you don't want to rely on traps, they are pretty underperforming a lot of the builds. And then I suppose I could also just mention really fast something really cool. Actually, I find it pretty cool. The Necromancer. That is probably one of the best balanced classes in Diablo 2. It's so hard to tell which is the better class. The Summon Druid is completely different from the Poison Nova Necromancer to the Bone Necromancer is also quite different from the Poison Nova Necromancer, and so forth. They all play very differently. Obviously they all end up relying on the stupid corpse explosion, which is a little too good, obviously. But they're so different, and they're all very balanced equally. They're like, none is really too good than the other one. You could say the Summer Necromancer is probably the best build. You know, in general, it can start out with no gear level, etc., perform really good, and then at the pure end game with like really good gear, it can even do Ubers. So that's pretty sweet. And then of course, like, here at the end, maybe I'm just a fanboy of the Sorceress in general, but I find that the Sorceress is the best class in Diablo 2. It has many builds that it can do, and all of them perform really well. None of them are kind of underperforming. They can even start out with having, you know, teleport and access to good kiting spells that does a lot of damage even with no real gear invested into the build. That is obviously Blizzard. Blizzard should maybe actually be nerfed a little bit. It's kind of too good for a level 24 ability, whereas something like a Frozen Orb, maybe you should actually buff the Frozen Orb damage, I'm just saying, and then put Blizzard at level 30 or something. Maybe that's just my opinion, but it is kind of strong ability at level 24, because it really needs no gear to be good, even when you're, you know, running around in hell difficulty with like not even found a Shaco yet or Viper magic chest. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would do the balance, how I would do the HD remaster of Diablo 2. I would love to know your thoughts and comments about these. You know, it's a topic I've been thinking a little about lately. A lot of people seem to only want, you know, minimal changes or nothing at all, and then some people want both content like a new act, etc. I'm kind of just in between. I would just like a few balance changes, and then of course higher resolution, bug fixes if there are anything. You know, there's probably a few behind the scene bug fixes they can do, maybe even work out completely getting rid of duping methods or fixing Stone of Jordan, what do I know. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.